Hey, what's up, Liron here, and in this video we're gonna learn how to paint something that from afar may seem a little realistic, but up close there are barely any details. We're gonna do it using this coastal scene, and I really hope you enjoy this one. So without further ado, let's get started. So we have a bit of a unique scene here, and we'll start drawing. The thing is, I really zoomed in on the original picture to find a good composition. It was fairly challenging. But like everything here, we don't really have a sky and land, it's all land. So like everything, I'm gonna look for the largest shapes. In this example, it is actually the coastline, and it starts kind of diagonally and then goes all the way down to here. So I'm just gonna fill in the blank. It just goes like that and connects here. So that's kind of one half and another half. Now out of that, in the water, we have the, what do you call that thing? I always forget names of things, but the dock, sorry. So we have the dock coming right around here. The only reason to put it in really is those beautiful highlights that there are present on it. Now I'm going to put in a couple of boats, and notice the simplicity. Again, I'm working fairly small size here and trying to experiment with a bit of a different, smaller format, smaller, simpler composition, just to see what will happen. I really thought long and hard about whether I want to go at it a little smaller, and I decided to do that. So I don't have a lot of room to play around with details, and I think that'll be a nice way of kind of setting us free and not worrying too much about the detail. Okay, so just put in the boats, like literally simple oval shapes, or semi rectangular shapes. We have the coastline here with the water, kind of like that, which is going to be just a highlight. Okay, we have a bunch of boats here. Before we put those in, let's put in some of the buildings. So what we can actually see is just some rooftops, not too much detail here as well. So we have this rooftop of the building that's close to us, and I'm really winging the drawing in a way, keeping it very simple, and also, again, because it's a relatively small scene, I actually don't mind being inaccurate with the drawing, like really inaccurate, as long as the painting kind of turns out the way I want it to. Okay, so I don't really mind messing up the general shape of the drawing. I want to keep this one fairly simple. Now the buildings cast a bit of a shadow to the front like that, and in fact this rooftop here is in the light, but everything around it is kind of in the shadow. Okay, so all of this is one big shadow. It has a smaller kind of roof, and you see I really am kind of messing up the accuracy to get, let's say, a simpler impression for us, the viewers. So I'm gonna just put in a couple of these small boats here. You see there's a lot of them actually. I'm gonna just mark them. You see how simple it gets once you work this small size. You kind of have to keep it simple, or otherwise you just won't find your, anything. It'll be just a big mess. I'm gonna remove that thing that I don't know what it is even, so I'm gonna not put it in the painting. There is this light kind of wall of a building here. It's gonna be fairly dark and blue, but I think, and a couple of highlights here, I think we're nearly done here. You just want to make sure right now to place in those highlights as strategically as possible, because that's the only thing that's going to show after this stage of the initial wash that we're going to do in a moment. But in any case, I think this one's ready for painting. So we'll see. I know it's really simplistic. It barely has any details, and if we get a somewhat abstract result here, I don't really care. I think it'll be a lovely thing, and I like to sometimes go with less and see what I can produce out of it. Sometimes it's an interesting challenge to take. So one of the things I really do want to achieve here is that beautiful temperature and the contrast between the warms here and the cools here. So what we're going to do is an initial wash. It's going to be fairly light, because look at those rooftops. They're really, really light. So you can treat this as kind of an underpainting. And because we're working so small, we actually have more freedom and more time. That's how it is. You have less to worry about, paper drying and so on. So what I'm going to do is just go with very rough shapes and block those in. My treatment of color is going to be very simple. All I care about is temperature. So warm, cool. I don't really care which color I'm working with in particular. So here we go. Very transparent, very, clear. I want this color to really show the paper white and preserve that kind of a thing. Now, as we move down, let's actually charge these areas with a little more red just to strengthen and warm it up, okay? And as we move left and down, we're gonna start putting in some more neutral colors. So I'm just picking up actually leftovers of my palette because again, I don't really care about the color in particular. You know, usually I do these washes in the form of primary colors, but this time we're not gonna care about that kind of a thing. I'll actually use whatever I have on the palette. There is something freeing to doing that, in fact. Now what we do want to pay attention to is the highlights, because those are going to be left white. So we have two highlights in the water, and now let me crank up the blue just a bit. So we're going to go around these boats like that. And I'm really into preserving the flow and not worrying too much about the highlights. But I do want to show them at the very least, and I think they look good if you can get them on the first go, so to speak. So we're going to paint around those. We have this dock here that we're going to paint around. It actually has two parts, but I'm going to ignore it and just make it white like that. And then move into perhaps some clearer blue. Work my way around these boats. Look at how small this painting is and how much time, or let's say reaction time, this allows us. Here we have some of the waves. There's quite a lot of highlights here, like for the boats. So I'm just gonna work my way around them. And this could have been a very complex wash had I worked a little larger. So I'm actually quite happy about that. Now, one major highlight you wanna make sure you leave here is that the waves here on the right. So I'm gonna go like that, close this off, work really fast around these boats, and in fact let's put in some yellow onto this blue, because you can see some hints of green here close to us, and I think it will lead to a nice variety in the water and their color. And even though this is small, I do have to work fairly fast if I want to get everything in and flow properly, to be honest. So here on the right, I'm going to switch to more red, maybe even a bit of more yellow, sorry, maybe even a bit of red, and kind of work my way, connect here. These parts have started to dry, but it's not a disaster yet. And work my way around all of these boats of different sizes and different shapes. And yeah, I'm doing it in a kind of time-saving manner. As you've seen, I'm doing one line and then dividing it up. But in any case, now I think we actually have what we need for an initial wash. Let me just pick up a bit of paint here to have this a little lighter. And I think we're good to go. Let's let it dry and then come back for the following layers. So this is fully dry, and now we get to what I consider to be the hardest wash. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna squint my eyes and try to really see this as a bunch of simplified shapes. And I'm gonna try and tackle it from this angle, okay? It's not always an easy thing to do, but let's see what I can do here. So, as for the background, it's pretty cool, pretty dark, and I want to actually start with that, you see, because that's gonna really bring out the beauty of these rooftops. So what we have here is just a dark kind of neutral color here, and you may want to work your way around the rooftops and just leave a couple of interesting shapes there. The edges can mean quite a lot here. So you'll see, slowly we will build the shape of this scene using this kind of negative painting technique, like so. Here we have this small gap between the buildings, but that's where it pretty much ends. And this goes around the other side of the rooftops. We get this kind of an interesting shape here of the multitude of them. And if you can leave like a, I don't know, something for a stray chimney or something like that, that usually looks really nice. Now this moves on to the left side. And these buildings themselves are a little lighter than this shadowy thing, so I'm gonna leave them for now. Now let's put in a bit of coolness here. Okay, so I'm just using a bit more blue. We do have this structure that's in the shadow. So I'm going to work my way around it. Now, as you're using drier paint, you sometimes have to pick up the pace a bit because some of it will dry a little faster, which is why I'm working small here again, because my goal here isn't to make life super hard for myself. I just want to enjoy a smaller scale composition. And because of that, I decided to work smaller sizes just to allow myself to be less stressed out about all of these things. So now let's cut through here just to get, you see there are small differences in wetness, which may lead to an uneven wash. And again, it's really hard to sometimes get it to be perfectly even, especially as you're moving into thicker and thicker colors, but that's fine, it's not the end of the world. I'm gonna leave this small rooftop there, and you see the top part is kind of fixing itself up, so to speak. Now we do have this strong shadow behind some of the boats of maybe an additional dock or something like that. Let's put in a bit of coolness to that. And then we have the shadows under the boats themselves. Like this. Maybe you can get very small details in if you want to, but not too much at this size of a painting. Same goes for these. There are a couple of rocks here. Now, as we get closer to our middle ground or foreground, you see how it kind of lightens up a bit, and the section right under the buildings is a little darker. And at this stage, I'll actually be tempted to connect it with the building. So let's go for that. Let's connect with a very watery wash the shadows on the walls of the buildings, which are fairly light, you see, with the sides and with the bottom part. It's a bit of a risk here, but I'm fine with that. And you can vary it up. You can add maybe a little more warmth to that mix, a little more coolness. Just try and keep it interesting. But you see it's a fairly light wash that's making this connection here. This side I'm going to keep light here because it looks to be fairly light. And every time you do this, you want to really think about the shapes around whatever area you touch, let's say. So this, let's go like that. This connects to the shadow under the building. A bit of a more neutral one, so a bit of red, a bit of yellow, a bit of that blue, and just leftovers on the palette. And you see these lovely highlights within this shadow. You really want to make sure I get those in, and there is a gap of light here that is also very important. So I'm going to keep that and work my way around here. Because it's a smaller size, again, we have more time. One trick I can always give you, again, is to squint your eyes and try and really reduce the painting into very general abstract shapes. It's a bit of a hard thing to master at first, but once you do it for a while, you'll start getting it and understanding how to do that. By squinting, you force yourself to just see some very simple shapes rather than all of the details, okay? Now there is, while I'm squinting, I see that there is an area within the water that's a little darker. So I'm gonna get that in, you see? And squinting helped me see this. This entire thing is just a tad bit darker. See, like that. And then as it gets closer to us, it kind of fades into a bit of a lighter version, you see? And the impression is starting to be built of a shore scene or a coastal scene. I'm gonna add, it's really important at this point to just keep your eyes on the vision and not worry if it still doesn't look exactly like it, okay? You just keep adding details, keep maybe lifting if you need to, keep doing these small actions that accumulate into a finished piece, okay? We have these shadows under the boats, okay? Even though I darkened the water, we still need those cast shadows by the boats. So I'm getting those in. This is one of the main ones, like so. A bit of details here up top. Maybe a bit of a stripe here. I even allowed myself to go this far. A bit of this there. And you can vary the color of this. Let's go pure blue with maybe this one. You see, it just adds a bit of interest here. And once we get to the boats on the coast, it's a fairly neutral mix. and lighter at that. So I'm just gonna start putting it in, a bit more warmth actually, like that. This goes all the way towards here. There is a bit of a shadow next to the wave, or the crashing wave, maybe even under it. You see, just squinting your eyes and simplifying the whole thing can really help. All I see is just dots of white, areas of blue, areas of red, areas of more neutral shadows. This entire thing, shadow. Okay, I'm gonna make it a little warmer. And now you see the gap we have between the two buildings, like that, a gap of light. That's gonna look really nice. Painting around these highlights. This wash is gonna pretty much finish the painting. And now you have to think, do I connect this all the way to the bottom, or do I keep this gap here? I think I'll keep it. I'll normally just connect it, but I don't know why. Intuitively, I think it will be good to indicate that the building ends here. Okay, now for the actual walls of the building, let's mix warm yet light. Mix like that, so that we have some kind of a detail under the rooftop. And you see how it gives a new context to this gap of light here? Just makes it mean more. Now within the rooftops, we have all these interesting shadows that divide them into different pieces, and so let's get those in. We have this one around here. We have this small kind of shadow hanging under the rooftop, so we can get that in, make a nice little distinction. Same goes for these ones. It's a bit of a trick or a gimmick, but it can lead to nice results. We have these additional rooftops here. Now for the chimneys that we put earlier, I just neutralized the wash a bit. Now light comes from the right, so if we have a chimney here, it's going to cast a shadow to the left. You see? If we have a chimney here, it's going to cast a shadow to the left, like that. And if you can get just one or two of these, notice how quickly they establish, like their shape is established. It's very easy to do that. Okay. Now what I think I'm going to do, this works really well in an abstract manner. But now all we have left to do, and I'm going to switch to a smaller brush to do that, is add some details in. And I actually am not going to wait till it dries. We're going to go at it pretty alla prima. Because most of these areas have already dried anyway, so we don't need much. So what I'm going to do is just add a couple of details here and there for the windows mainly, and just to show that these are buildings. You see how it makes it feel more three-dimensional? I quite like that effect. Same goes for these. Trying to make my tutorials a little simpler. It seems like sometimes I go into too many details and I end up doing too complex of processes when my initial intention was to keep things simple. If I'm aiming for complexity, I really don't mind, but sometimes I am aiming for simplicity and ends up being too complex. So yeah. Now I'm gonna use the paint here just to establish some, again, dry brush details. But once I feel like I got rid of enough paint, I'm gonna go back to the water actually and add some details there. You'll see in a moment. So you see how I'm following the direction of perspective, which is something, again, I'm talking about in separate videos. It's a bit of a large topic to just discuss here. But here, I'm going back to the water and just adding some texture using the leftover paint, which barely is there. And that helps just to create a sense of maybe some waves. You don't want to overdo this, or just here and there. You make this, scratchy pattern, and it just makes the viewer believe that there are ripples in the water or something like that. This is an effect that works really well when it's such a small scene, really. Now let's maybe add a couple of smaller details to the boats, like red here and there, just to make some of them pop and look interesting, I would say. Let's add even a bit of yellow to one of them and see what happens. You see, it just gives the viewer something more to focus on. And it's a small scale painting, so we don't need much. In fact, we better avoid doing too much of this, just a bit. And really think about these extra details you put in. Am I putting them in the most interesting place I can? Am I using them to enhance the focal point, or maybe I'm hurting it? All of these things, they come with experience, but try and think in these terms at least be aware of that, you know. So here we have this cabin thing, maybe we have one here too. Now what's really going to be cool is just to add a couple of masts. There aren't any masts here, but you know, this is why we paint, so we can change things. We don't have to follow the reference at all. We can do whatever we want. And this is exactly what we're going to do here, just darkening this dock a bit. But in any case, yeah, we can do whatever we want, and if it's a coastal scene, why not put in a couple of masts just to make things a little more, you know, interesting. And in fact, what I'm gonna do is add them in white. So let me get my white color here, and we'll try. Some of the paint is not fully dry, so the white may not take perfectly, but as long as we get a bit of it here and there, you see how huge of a difference it makes. And this is a very small scene too. It's very, very small, so you see like that, just to bring in some, you know, highlights. And we can actually use this white to enhance some highlights that were missed here, or maybe put some more details in the shadows. Maybe there's something here. Maybe there are some very light objects here on the rooftops, like the chimneys, or, you know, whatever. You're free to do whatever you want. You know, use the paint in whichever way you see fit. When I look at the reference, there are in fact a couple of details on the rooftops that are lighter, but you see how very quickly and very simply we got this lovely impression of a coastal scene. And in Sorrento, Italy, just a beautiful, beautiful place. Had a really good time visiting it, and maybe hint at a couple of more boats here. And that's it. I don't want to overdo it. Let me just sign it, remove the tape, and we'll conclude. So here we go, tape removed. I also refocused the camera, and with these paintings, as you may know if you watched a couple of my videos, when you have a lot of darkness all around the painting, removing the tape really does make a pretty big difference in allowing us to see it as a frame, as a clean piece. I'm gonna hold it up a little close so you can see from up close. There's barely anything here, really, but if you just look at it from afar, and if you've been watching this on your phone, you probably noticed it just looks more and more realistic. And I love these scenes that look realistic from afar, then as you get close you see how much is hinted, and it just works the magic of our brain, so to speak. This can be a lovely attempt towards a more finalized painting, or it can be a painting in and of itself. So in any case, I hope you enjoyed this one. Now let's wrap it up face to face. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and there are endless ways of tackling these kinds of subjects. I do think that a big part of it is getting those values right. If you can get the temperature right, like I feel like I really have here, then that's a huge plus, especially around these rooftops. It just screams warmth, and the warmth is even kind of radiates to the environment around it. And then you don't need much more than that. Large shapes that are close to what you see and the right value, and then some small details to really bring out the meaning of what you're looking at. But I love this kind of an impressionistic approach. You know, from afar it looks almost realistic, from up close there are barely any details. And again, this idea of squinting your eyes really helps. So I want to thank you so much. This is it for this one. Don't forget to drop a like if you enjoyed this one, and comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. I do try to reply more and more comments. Hopefully this month I will be able to. And one last thing, share this video with someone you know will find it helpful. I really appreciate it, and it helps me reach more people. Thank you so much, and I will see you again real soon.